Welcome back. We have coL.CrunCher in the left position as the blue Protoss, and in the Southlands we have MYM.Mondragon as the red Zerg, and it already looks like there's probably going to be some interesting action, as you love to point out, Husky, most maps have that clockwise versus counterclockwise expand pattern. Exactly what we're seeing. CrunCher's natural and second natural point towards Mondragon, and Mondragon's early expos point away from CrunCher. So that does mean that Mondragon could get away with a little bit of drop in action. And knowing how much of an intuitive player Mondragon is, I would not be surprised to see him even change his playstyle on the fly to allow for that.
Yeah, and the spawn locations, I know we mentioned this a lot, but it does play a massive role in StarCraft 2. I mean, look at how close that third base for CrunCher is to Mondragon's base. Literally can just load up some slow overlords and drop them from kind of that smoky area to that third base right there. And Mondragon, we have seen him use drops quite heavily in the past, so would not be surprised to see that whatsoever. But the main feature of this map is, I believe it is the only map out there in the kind of tournament pools right now where you can secure 3 bases off of 1 choke. So expect to see a lot of times on this map macro style of play, but judging by these spawn locations, that may throw it off just a little bit because they are dangerously close to each other. I mean, especially with how big this map is.
It does look like we see CrunCher throwing down his assimilator after his gateway, both getting them kind of late. Not late in a bad way, but late as in a I want to chrono boost as many probes as possible kind of way. We see Mondragon throwing down his spawning pool, sending that drone out again a little bit later than your average bear. And there's CrunCher already eager and ready to maybe plant a pylon. Whoa! Oh, Mondragon could have easily thrown down that hatch. CrunCher gonna go ahead and throw the pylon down, but Mondragon says no big deal. I'll just take this third with the rich geyser. It's what I wanted anyways. And says, no, I'll just go ahead and take my natural. It's what I wanted anyways.
Yeah, so a little indecisiveness there, but it is easier to defend that one just because of creep spreading, going to get it down there quickly. And it seems like CrunCher thought he may have forced the expansion to be at the third base, but got a little ahead of himself, canceled that pylon, and is not going to be able to do that. You can see just checking down there to be like, wait, did he actually take that third or not? So it is going to be 2 base Zerg right now. I mean, we're only 3 minutes into a game, so it would be a very aggressive expansion timing if he decided to go for it already. But of course, you need enough minerals to pay for your queen and the couple of Zerglings to deny that scouting, which just looking at the units production tab, he only has 2 Zerglings on the field, and it looks like instead of getting 4 Zerglings, he's just going to squeeze out that extra drone.
Wow, 2 Zerglings only. That's a little bit more of an old schooler style of Zerg to play. The idea of, yeah, I don't want anything but drones for as long as I can imagine. And we're even seeing from Mondragon no gas getting thrown down yet. Perhaps they'll do the Spanishiwa style Beano Zerg, the no gas Zerg. He might even save up and throw down that third base. We see that gas guys are going down at around 25 food, but again, I would not be surprised to see Mondragon with that extra bit of cash, planning on throwing down the third, and there it is. We see the drone with mineral in hand heading down, and there plops down a very fast third hatch.
Yeah, and you were mentioning that Spanishiwa style of play. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's essentially you don't get gas until you have about 80 trillion drones, although we do see 1 gas on the way, which, of course, if you get that gas, it does allow you to tech up a little bit. You can start getting those roaches and things like that, which most Zerg players are comfortable with in the early mid-game. And we do have a Stargate on the way for CrunCher. This is no surprise to CrunCher fans out there, as he is known for going for that Stargate. And I would say a pretty good choice, considering that the main base of Mondragon is going to be so close to him that if he decides to go for Phoenix or Void Ray, they will be able to get to his opponent's base right away. And the Stargate has not been scouted quite yet.
Stalker did a little bit of poking at the front, but not too much damage. Only managed to pick off 1 Zergling in his journeys from the front of the base. We see Mondragon now moving out with about 9 Zerglings, trying to pick off that 1 Stalker in the center of the map. But Stalker's very, very fast, will likely be able to maneuver its way back to home base. We see CrunCher getting that Void Ray produced. If you've ever watched CrunCher stream, this is an opening he does very, very frequently. And here it looks like CrunCher's going to be able to get to his ramp just barely in time. Very, very nice timing on that. And we see that Mondragon still has no layer tech at all, just devoting to early Zergling speed. Might even be investing in a Roach Warren or perhaps an Evolution Chamber. Mondragon, well known for getting fast upgrades in both RTSs that I have seen him play, Husky.
Yeah, and the stalker there was pretty ballsy in the center of the map. That's not something easy to do, as Zerglings can take advantage of you. There is an attempt at kind of cracking the entrance here for CrunCher, maybe trying to force the force field to try and trap some Zerglings there, but he did lose one or two, a handful there, and I'm curious to see if Mondragon spotted the Stargate yet. Yes, he did, so he knows exactly what's on the way. He is not going to be too surprised by this Void Ray inside of his main base, but it is going to arrive right now. Going to be charging up on the Extractor, so he's that much more effective against these Queens, and a second Void Ray just now spawning as well.
Two Queens easily repel the harassment. Mondragon now joining everything together with Creep. There's the Roach Warren and Evo Chamber going down. Love the way that Mondragon, we've seen him play this out. Two Void Rays arriving right now. Will Mondragon have enough? He's trying to throw down those Spore Crawlers as quickly as he can, but he has to be very, very careful. If he gets caught out of position with those Queens, one lift is going to tell the whole story. Easily going to be able to pick off both of those Queens with that with those pair of Void Rays, and there comes them again, going to that one Extractor, but there's three Queens there now, so again, it looks like CrunCher will have to retreat. Will have to make another Phoenix if he wants to be able to try to crack that side, and uh-oh, it looks like the counter to air is just finished, Husky, the Roach Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the Roaches can't shoot air. But anyways, the Void Rays are going to move down here, and a lot of times players think that they need to commit to using these Void Rays until they die, but a lot of times you can use it to safely expand once Spore Crawler is forced on that cancel. Four Queens trying to book it around here. They are super slow, though, even when they are on that creep trying to chase around these flying units. So as long as CrunCher keeps these units alive, he can safely grab his expansion, which you can see he already did that. He is still continuing, though, with that Void Ray production. He does have a third one on the way. What do you think he's going to do with that third one?
Well, I think that there's actually a lot of pressure that CrunCher's feeling right now. I mean, he could just be massing up Void Rays because, you know, he wants to mass up Void Rays for his endgame army, so no reason not to start right now or something along those lines. But what Mondragon showed us in his games against Zerax is that if you favor too much air, like too many Phoenixes, too harassy of a style, Mondragon doesn't build Hydralisk or Mutalisk to kill them off directly. He instead sidesteps the whole thing by massing up a ton of Roaches, and in that way, he ends up killing off the very small, weakened ground army. So CrunCher probably studied this style, knows that he will probably have to get more Void Rays at the start just as a defensive play to deal with that high Roach count.
Now we do have a Hydralisk in on the way for Mondragon. He just cranked out a lot of drones as well, only has a couple of Roaches on the way, so it looks like CrunCher does have position outside of his opponent's base. Will try and use these Void Rays to get fully charged on these Spine Crawlers. It will come down to if these Void Rays can get fully charged. They're seconds away from getting that to transfuse. Will keep these stack defenses up, though. CrunCher really committing here, though, running into a wall of 4 Spine Crawlers with Queens, mass healing them as much as they possibly can. There's just no ground army here right now, though, for Mondragon, and a force field on the ramp will prevent more reinforcements. CrunCher doing a surprising amount of damage here as he's busting inside of Mondragon's main base. Maybe he overdroned here.
Well, the thing to keep in mind, though, is that he does have the Roach Burrow and the Roach Tunneling Claws. So now, as long as he can get enough Queens up in time, he can pick off these Void Rays, but he has to be very, very careful. Those Queens are following, or excuse me, those Void Rays are following down those Queens. There's the Roach Burrow doing a little bit of damage. The Phoenix is going to come back in again, doesn't have enough for a lift, and CrunCher's army taking some massive amount of damage, and now their Hydralisk getting produced, and suddenly Mondragon has an absolutely enormous lead, streaming forward with Roaches and Zerglings. Just a couple of air units remain, and at the front of CrunCher's base, he's trying to mass up as many cannons and units as he can, but he just does not have that many gateways, just 2, so this is now a huge, huge point of danger for CrunCher as Mondragon is just waltzing right on in with those fast units, the Roaches and the Zerglings, and just taking out the cannons, ripping apart those Zealots at the front, and once that cannon's down, he can easily use the Roach Burrow for a little bit of protection. One Roach does manage to survive, so he'll be able to pop into the main base, do a little bit of scouting himself.
Yeah, just looking at the units tab, there is no observer to spot this. So these units can get past the defenses for as long as they want until these cannons are completed. The second one going to be finishing up right now, and Mondragon did not continue to reinforce that super heavily. Just looking through his base, he does have a lot of larvae sitting around. I think he's trying to decide on if he wants to go for drones or more attacking units. Decides to go for drones, so he does have 7 drones on the way as well as a Spire. His tech is looking pretty good right now, as he does have that Hydralisk Den as well as a Spire on the way. Now, I'm surprised that CrunCher was able to hold that off, because I was watching before, after he lost that first battle outside of Mondragon's base, he was sitting at around 1,000 to 1,200 minerals, so thankfully for him, he was able to scramble those units as quickly as he possibly could once he realized that his macro was slipping just a little bit, and he is going to be taking his 3rd base as that is wrapping up right now. Mondragon following suit, though, by taking his 4th.
And I love that play by Mondragon. That's a very... Oh, look at this. A 5th base going down for Mondragon. This is very much so the RTS intuitive play from Mondragon. This is not part of a build order where he says, yes, at 132 food I expand twice. This is him realizing, yeah, I killed off a very, very threatening push, which means that my opponent likely is not going to have any way to put pressure back on me. Moreover, he only has 2 warp gates and 1 star gate, as Mondragon can see with this scout burrowed roach that's still in the main. So he's going to be able to do plenty of good judgment and just take those 2 expos. We see a lot of overlords at the north side, a couple overlords in the center sacrificing themselves. Mondragon really wants to regroup and make a big drop play at the opponent.
I think that is a huge deal that those 4 overlords went down. It looked like he was going to hope to drop right behind the expansion defenses there. However, CrunCher just bought himself at least a minute here, taking out those overlords. You mentioned the 4 overlords in the center. They are now full of units. I believe that is all roaches inside of those. But the thing is that I think he's going to have to attack the front while dropping in the back of the base. All this War Prism is going to spot these 4 overlords as well, so CrunCher knows exactly what's headed his way. At the same time, though, there is going to be an attack at the center, so CrunCher knows what to expect here. Is he going to be prepared?
Well, it looks like the Roach is moving in the front. It's going to try to take that forge down. There's only 6 more seconds to finish it, and he does not finish the upgrade. Incredibly brutal timing right there by Mondragon. The main attack is not going well at all, but the front is having massive damage dealt. There's a Colossus about to pop out, and Mondragon could possibly target fire it, but no, instead stopped for the robotics bay. The Roach is in the back, denying any kind of mining. We see a giant army starting to get masked up by Mondragon in the production tab. There's that Colossus in the main. Colossus is not being watched closely enough. It is down into the yellow health. He's going to have to pull back, and probes do manage to sneak in the way, but everything, the Roaches at the front, dealing massive damage. There's 1 Hydralisk in that army at the front. Other than that, all Roaches and mass aggression from Mondragon, dealing incredible damage. There's the Nexus taking heavy hits. It looks like the natural from CrunCher is gonna fall. CrunCher trying to regroup with the Colossus, but Mondragon one-shots it with those remaining Roaches. Zealots in the front trying to push back. The Void Rays are CrunCher's only way to deal with this.
Once again, the macro did slip a little bit there for CrunCher during that battle. There's still Roaches inside of his main base, just seeming to not have enough production facilities to keep up with this constant harassment. And the problem is that even once he cleans out these Roaches, there's just a reinforcing army right at his main base right now, and this is not going to look good for CrunCher. I definitely think he was outplayed for the majority of this game, not doing the damage that he needed to in that first attack. And even though he has Void Rays in pretty annoying numbers, it doesn't even matter because there's so many Roaches. With that +1 armor upgrade, the +2 attack completed as well, and keeping up with all this action is almost impossible as there is attacks going on at all of the bases of CrunCher. He's scrambling around, trying to defend it as best he can, working in Stalkers, which do that additional damage versus those Roaches, and CrunCher's army now is looking okay, but you gotta remember it is 170 supply versus 84, so even after cleaning these up, he still has to contend with a nearly maxed out Zerg army.
And there's those 5 Roaches in the back of the main, unburrowing, starting to pick off more probes. CrunCher has to retreat yet again. CrunCher's only hope, this north hidden expansion, but right now CrunCher is far too busy bouncing back and forth between his second base and his starting base, just trying to prevent those Roaches from doing any sort of permanent damage. Are there any robotics facilities on the map? 1 at the second natural. We see CrunCher does not even have an observer on the field nearby his main. Desperately needs to get that observer back home to be able to do some spotting action, but we see, oh my goodness, Corruptors and Hydras at the front. Good game from CrunCher. Does not even want to play that match out. Mondragon again making tons and tons of Roaches against an army that seems to be designed to be anti-Roach, but having just phenomenal aggression timing to be able to take down CrunCher.
Definitely picked CrunCher apart there, and I think the macro of CrunCher was working against him for the majority of that. And also what seemed to be a pretty devastating thing for his army is he did not have an observer once those burrowed Roaches started showing up at his base, and then since he was trying to get our Colossus to defend, the Roaches were just freely moving around the base in their little underground tunnels, and it just completely picked him apart. Just looking at the replay that I still have open, 84 drones for Mondragon, so a lot of his supply, while it was in the drone count, he was able to just to constantly macro that army, and so even though he only had about 100 supply to work around with attacking units, he was able to reinforce it constantly that it was extremely terrifying. He did do that double expand, and looking at the map, he already had tons of Hydralisks, tons of Roaches on the way, continuing to just, push into CrunCher's base. So I think CrunCher realized, I'm so far behind, there's no way I can win this. I don't need to have my entire army destroyed. I just need to, kind of regroup and go into game number 2, not giving his opponent the satisfaction of destroying that army. But, it doesn't really matter, though, because he is currently up 1-0 with that very aggressive playstyle that we were talking about before, utilizing drops and things like that, which I think is perfect on this map, especially with the spawn locations they had. Mondragon, I think, played it out just right.
Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, in the series between CrunCher and Idra, CrunCher won the 3rd game with a very nice Warp Gate push, won the 1st game with a very, very solid passive Colossus Void Ray Gateway unit style, but Idra wrecked CrunCher on Terminus. And CrunCher even said that he did not have a lot of confidence going into that match on Terminus. So would not be surprised if CrunCher had the same mentality. Going into that game, thought to himself, the only way I really think I'm going to win on this map is if I just do some sort of goofy Stargate Gateway push at the start. And if it doesn't work, no big deal. I wasn't even planning on winning that match anyways. The next map, though, is Shakura's Plateau, where CrunCher has a lot of confidence and a lot of flair with his very, very well-structured defensive Colossus Void Ray opening.
And also, it's important to note that the map that was just played on is not really in the map ladder pools for Battle.net, so to actually play a lot of games on that map, not only do you have to play unranked games, but you also have to have a lot of training people to play against, friends and people in your clan and stuff like that, and so you have to go way out of your way to practice on a map like that, while on our next map, Shakura's Plateau, well, you can practice that map anytime you want just by laddering, and it is important to note, though, we mentioned this last time, but if you're just tuning in, this version of Shakura's Plateau is the older version where there is rocks in the backside of the base with an expansion back there. However, they will be spawning on the cross positions. They won't be spawning super close together or anything like that. So it will play a huge role here, as Blizzard did recently change the map, but this version that we are using today does leave their bases a little bit more vulnerable to counterattacks if they are able to destroy those rocks inside of your base, but there is also a fairly easy to secure expansion back there, and it is also the version with the little smiley face expansions, and a lot of people were sad that Blizzard removed the smiley face expansions, but it is the older version, and so we are going to be going on here to game number 2. Sean, do you have anything to say before we go to the commercials? Because, I keep segueing pretty terribly.
Hey, don't worry about it, man. I'm a total pro at this. Watch this. Ready, set. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's bop directly into game number 2 between Complexity's CrunCher, the Idra Crusher, against Mondragon, the mystery Zerg man who always seems to have a plan. Let's hit it.